Let's get talking about the whole generational curses of a thing. So let me take my tablet. Okay, so let's talk about my mommy. These generational curses. I pray this takes me less time. Okay. A lot of people, a lot of times we've been given the concept that generational curses is the sins of the father following the children, and this has been going on for decades, centuries, so I decided to do my little research on the whole thing. And the concept of this came on, I think it's in Exodus 34 from verses 7, that says, keeping mercy and loving kindness for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgressions and sin. But he will by no means leave the guilty unpunished, visiting, avenging the iniquity, in brackets, sin and guilt of the father upon the children and grandchildren to the third and fourth generation. Okay, so that was Moses talking about the said generational curses. Now, I want you all to know that Exodus was written in Aramaic or Hebrew, as you all know. And when I did my research, the actual word in the place of curses ought to be Avon, Avon. Okay, Avon, should be the root word, not curses. So in the original manuscript in Hebrew, it was Avon that was used. That was the word used. Okay, and because Avon did not have a root word, okay, in the course of them translating it, they now came, the closest word that could come to their head was curse. Okay, so now curse at that time, I have not bothered to check on the meaning of curse, but curse is like a spell. Okay, but if you check the original manuscript of Exodus, it is not curse that is written on it. It is Avon, and Avon means punishment and chastisement. Okay, the meaning of Avon here is a noun and it's masculine. The transliteration is Avon, Avon. I earlier said it means iniquity, punishment, chastisement, guilt. So I would let the guilt of the sins of the father go down to the third and the fourth generation. Now let's talk about sin. Sin comes from, in this context, sin is the Greek word chata'a. Okay, CHATTAH. I'll sound, I don't know if I'll sound a good, but when I'm trying to edit it, I'm going to, put it there. And sin meaning here means that the root word of this chata'a is chata, which is sin. Now, it occurred 294 times in the Bible, and it means to sin, or in other words, to go wrong, done wrong, falter, miss the mark, miss the way, fail to find, or fail to have. So whoever got me this, my sister, I want to say thank you. But so sinning is not like it's a concept outside the ordinary. Sinning simply means you've missed the mark, you've missed the way. The way, we're talking about patterns. So when the Bible says, I will visit the iniquity, it means that the pattern of thinking or the wrongdoings or the wrong done by the parents, right? The children will not become aware of it until probably they found themselves in the same mess. Now, most of the people who translated the Bible or who wrote the Bible wrote it with reference to their belief system, the Jewish belief system. The Jews have a strong concept of karma, just like the Indians, and a strong concept of what we call generational curses. Okay, Now, in the actual sense, the word generational curses doesn't exist. Remember, I said that it does not. God does not curse anybody. So probably generations will be living the consequences of the happenings of their parents. So when the parents did wrong, the children will not become aware, and they just might continue living in that part. Okay. It is typical of a child raised in a toxic environment. In psychology, we have what we call nature/nurture, or nurture/nature. Nurture talks about genes. Nature talks about the environment. So each one of us, we are made from a gene. A human being is made from three. You have genetics, life experience, and the environment. Okay, so genetics, the environment, and life experience. Now, the environment comes to what we call in environmental psychology the mesosystem, which is the immediate environment a child is raised in. Okay, so if you come from a home where the parents are toxic, maybe verbally, physically, emotionally, or financially abusive, you don't know otherwise. Okay, you don't know otherwise. That is your pattern of life. So that has been planted on the inside of you. You will go on ahead with that pattern to the next. You might carry that pattern to your marriage and your way of life, and you will transfer it to your children. There is a gene, first of all, what we call the power of the bloodline. You've already inherited it. And so now you've inherited it by genealogy, and now you're inheriting it by experience, the environment. Subconsciously, unconsciously, you're walking about with this thing, knowing that a woman should be slapped at, a woman should be, in order to discipline her, a woman should be denied financial growth in order to discipline her, a woman should be denied emotions in order to discipline her, a woman should be insulted, be minimized in order to discipline her. So you would practice this thing because to you, that is the way out. You understand me? To you, that is it. So that is what becomes generational curses. It's your environment. God does not curse people. When Moses wrote this, he was writing it in terms of his environment. Remember, Moses came, because this part came from Exodus 34 verses 7. Moses was raised in Egypt. And in Egypt, the king was everything. So irrespective of how many years it took for him to be trained, there are still some concept in Egypt that was part of him, and that will always be part of him. And this is part of it. So the actual word for curses in the Bible is chastise, punishment. And you don't punish people because you hate them. Let's say a child did something, you're going to punish, or but rather the real word is reprimand or discipline or chastise the child for that action. And no mother will chastise a child right up to the fourth or third generation, except that person has not healed from the incident of that person, of the eventual perpetrator of the act. You understand? So if God is love, he doesn't keep those pains buried on the inside. And for no reason would he let it move from one generation to the other. So what you call generational curses, they are the actions of your parents. Okay, I know of a big girl in town. She's like a big friend of mine. You know, her children's father really suppressed her to a point where I couldn't take it anymore. So I called my mother to talk to her. Now, why was this man able to do this? She grew up in a home where her mother did not have a voice. She's well-learned, very intelligent. But she did not have a voice because her mother did not have a voice. So she learned that being a woman is accepting every shift a man brings to you. So she did not know anyway. This girl not go get money. As not the man get money, if you want to torture the girl, it did suffer the girl, even for chop the past the girl, and I never did. So I called my mother into action. Because if I want to talk to her, to be like, I am the one doing the talking. But let an elderly person do it for her. And my mother had to put her and talk to her. And today, she's doing well. Now he's taking care of his children. Whether he takes care of her, she doesn't really care because she's hustling. She could put up with this because she did not know anything else. That is the environment from which she came from. And if she had continued in that, if she did not have my mother to help her build her self-esteem, she would have raised a little beautiful girl in the same manner to tolerate abuse and every other thing as a way of life. And that little girl will raise her own child in the same manner, and it will continue. And her little son will grow up believing that the best way to handle a woman is to deny her money, to beat her, to verbally abuse her, or to emotionally abuse her. And he's going to do the same, because you will never raise children outside of who you are. So it is not God doing it. Okay, I was raised by a single mother, and I told myself I'm not going to have a baby outside. Now, I'm not saying anybody who has a baby outside is doing bad. I do not even stand for children born out of wedlock. I hate the tag. But if I have my money and I'm ready and I am healed from every trauma I've had to go through, I just might have a baby. You understand? But it's not something that is coming to my mind as pain now. So what we consider as emotional abuse, or generational causes, are the actions of our parents that have unconsciously been passed on to us. So if you grew up in an environment where drugs is everything, you would live with it. You would see women who did not know anything better. My mother told me she suffered a lot, so she made it her core that I don't suffer. So even as I've not been able to have a job, she gets sick, she gets depressed, because that wasn't the plan she had for me. She had a better plan, but she was like, no, I would leave some other person to do this because I had worked for this person. So it's about time for this person to reciprocate the goodwill. Now the person has failed. I've taken my destiny into my hands, but it chokes her up each and every day. You understand me? My mother said I had to walk from Bastos to where I was going, like Newtown to Moliwe, barefooted, no pants. Until one day they came to school and they were doing checkup. Not now that they don't check children up again. They discovered that I don't even have on a pants and I'm barefooted, and I was staying in there. I'm not going to call the person's house. And I didn't have all of these amenities handed to me. So she would have continued. Now there are incidents that she took there that somehow has passed on to me. My mother cannot talk to me without shouting. It's now that she's learning to do it, and it's not easy because I'm already used to that pattern. You understand? And I just shown her efforts, because I am struggling to heal, so that I don't pass it on to my child. You know, because she didn't grow up in a home where her emotions were managed properly. And my aunt who took care of her also had a very turbulent marriage. So you can see that it from there to here. And now I'm living with it, and I have to fight to ensure that my child do not inherit it, you know, in any manner. So I have to work on me. And I'll ensure that anybody that has to bring in that negative energy, I would block that person, because I don't want it. And I don't want my kids to experience it. You understand me? So generational curses are not it's not a spell. These are actions of our parents that were living. You know, my pastor, Dr. Sean, always said, when you do the things your parents did, like when you choose to make the mistakes your parents made, it's not a curse, it is your conscious decision, because you have become aware of what your parents were never aware of. And I find that to be true. Okay, I have a friend who's been traumatized in her marriage. And I realized, I was trying to do my doc up. Was your mother abused in her marriage? No. Your husband parent, was he abused in his parents' home? No. So where did your husband come from with this abusive character? And I realized that there is something her father should have done that her father didn't do. She did not have ordinary level. She did not have advanced level. It wasn't her father's fault. It was her fault. But then there is something I saw Russell, Ciara's husband, did to her daughter today, to his daughter. He took Sienna out on a date, and there was a brochure Ciara's husband, Russell, had to put here, and he failed to. And I heard little Sienna telling daddy, gentlemen put their brochures here, and she was tucking it in on the, I don't know how to call this part of the coat, on a man. And the dad said, okay. And he took her out with a bouquet of flowers. Oh yes, opened the door for little Sienna. They had a moment all by themselves. He is setting the standards for Sienna, and her mother is also setting the standards of a wife, and her father is setting the standard of a husband, a brother, and a best friend. So going into a toxic environment, Sienna is going to find it very difficult to live in it, because she did not come from that place. I find it very difficult living with people who betray people because I did not come from that place. Or if you come to my house, my mother will treat you better than she treats me. It's just her style. So when I go visit people and I see how they treat other people's children, I'm like, how did you guys learn this? Because I don't know where this came from. I've never experienced it before. You know, I don't know about it. So where are you guys coming from with this attitude? And so it just breaks every part of my being. You understand me? So curses do not exist. God do not curse people. It's just the consequences of the actions of our parents that we have failed to come to identify as Christians to put an end to it. Jesse had a child out of wedlock. David eventually had a child out of wedlock. And Solomon had multiple kids out of wedlock. Until you become aware of who you are and whose you are, you will continually make those mistakes. The problem about humanity is identity. You know, I just came across the post where it said the holy Jewish people have their holy land to be Israel. Japanese people have their holy land to be Japan. Arabians have their holy land to be Muslims have their holy land to be Arabia. Chinese people have their holy land to be China. Indians have their holy land to be India. And only in Africa do we have a holy land to be China, Japan, Asia, over that part. You could see how we suffer from identity crisis. So when the Lord said, I'm going to visit your children with this, it means I am going to discipline your children so that they do not repeat the mistakes that you made. It wasn't meant for bad. No, it's context. They took it out of context. It wasn't meant for, I'm not going to punish them with your sins. I am going to discipline. I'm going to chastise them so that they do not go the other way. But now it's been looked like God is going to visit the fourth generation with the sins of the father. No, he said, I am going to discipline. And he came back in Deuteronomy to explain that the sins of the father, the sons shall not bear. In Deuteronomy, it is evidently written, the sons shall not bear the sins of the father. So when Moses wrote it, Moses took everything out of context. The essence was to chastise, to discipline. So the fact that your parents went wrong, and I did not discipline them well, I'm going to pass on this discipline to you so that you would act better. Okay? It's not a bad thing for a father to discipline a child for them to be better. Trust me, when your daughter is raped or your son is abused, even a child coming to stay in your house, you become alert. You will not even want anybody to say hello to your daughter because you know deep down on the inside of you, it was this hello that brought my daughter to familiarity and eventually being raped, and probably she lost her life and lost her sanity. So that's what God is doing. He's being proactive with his own children. He's not passing it on in a negative light. It's in a positive light. I'm going to chastise you. I will discipline you and ensure that it doesn't go the other way out for me, because you're important to me. You're the essence of my life. You're the reason for which I live. You're the reason for which I came down on earth. You're the reason for which I created everything. And you named it, and I so accepted it, and I wrote it in the Bible because you are part of me and I am part of you, and for no reason will I separate myself from you. My only problem is for you to come to that knowledge that you're important to me and the entire world, not to settle for less. Okay, so it wasn't meant for what it is. So when they say you've sinned, it simply means you've missed the mark. If you are supposed to think affirmatively and you deviate to suppressive thinking, where you feel like you don't deserve anything, that's a sin. Yeah, because there is a power in your mind. What separated Paul from the others was his thinking and nothing else. Even David. You know, when the Bible says David is a man after God's own heart, and he came to John and said, Jesus Christ, a son in whom I'm well pleased. Let me be honest with you. David was more valued than Jesus Christ is and was and will ever be. Do you know what it means for you to be a man after my own heart? Your every essence is the reason for which I am existent as God. But for Jesus Christ, you are living for me. You're doing things to please me. But man lived his life to the fullest and fulfilled, and I still love who man is. So the Bible was written for identification purpose, so you don't feel less. And that's why when I see people coming up stage too, I traveled out, I never came to testify about it because it was a necessity. It's not a luxury. It's not a privilege. What is a privilege? It's me being able to tell you the truth, for me to love you, for me to want to see you grow, for me to want to, everywhere I am, I carry you along, because whatever is good for me is good for you. And whatever I want, I would want it for you. You understand me? So the essence of life, or the essence of this passage that people have taken out of context, is wrong. It was just for us to identify with who we are and whose we are, and to live a beautiful life out there. I hope this makes a lot of sense. Okay, so it all boils down to our environment. Children will live, the environment in which you raise your children and how you raise them would impact their choices in life. As a parent, who you marry, who you bring into your environment will determine the children you bring. And how the two of you live your lives in your matrimonial home is a stake for your sons and your daughters. It's a stake for whom your daughter marries, and a stake for whom your son falls in love with. Okay? And how to handle problems. I have looked at the two types of men I've dated. For no reason will I ever date a guy who was raised by a single parent ever in my life again. But you bring men who were raised by both parents, I find stability, because we can talk about everything, and they were willing to tell you that sorry to make it work. But these ones who were raised by single parents, the only thing they know is how to make money. They don't know what it's like to be a man. I remember I dated one who works in Sonora, and when he got the job, all my friends were like, Crystal, get pregnant for this guy. And I said, no. Why? Because I didn't want it to look like I am trying to trap him. You understand? I want him to take his decision out of his will. This is a woman I want to spend my life with. Okay? Now, I was in my two, he was at Limbola. So I just go visit once in a while. And to him, I pampered him so much because I knew his stepmother did not like him. And I know he's been through so much. And it was my place as a woman to make my guy's environment subtle and good for him to work and be affirmative and be productive. But this guy took on it. I remember one day he did something, and I went into the sitting room, and I just sat there and I cleaned my eyes. I came back to him. I said, it's okay. In his mind, I was desperate. In his mind, I did not know my worth. Do you know what that young man did? He went and got a girl pregnant. Now, both of us are kids born out of wedlock, and I did not want the incident to repeat itself. So what did I do? I made sure it never happened, because I want that thing to end with us, where our parents falter, so we don't have to falter. Let's walk down the aisle and do what is right, so we will end that negative bloodline. Guy screwed up, got a girl pregnant, and probably is regretting his actions, because it's very evident in the way he behaves. And I just looked at it. I said, I wish you would see. But the truth is, a lot of us women grow mature faster than men, so it takes some people time, especially those who did not have a social life, to learn the things some of us have been able to learn within a short period of time. So I just overlooked at that and then moved on like nothing happened. It took me a while, but I eventually healed from it, and it's changed my concept about a lot, but I'm trying to still be that me. So you can see a lot of people came from survival environments. So when you show them love, they don't see it as love. They see it as a sign of weakness. Like, you don't know your word. You don't know who you are. But you know who you are. The gospel has taught you that it's about love. And love is not affection. It's your personality. It's who you are. You don't separate love from its characteristic. Because once you do, it becomes sad. When I hear people say, love will not sustain a marriage, I'm like, do you know what you're talking about? Are you serious? Serious? How do you separate the characteristics of a person from that person? A whole lot of things have been taught upside down. So I hope this helps somebody. I love you.